Welcome back to the Monday edition, Monday of Reaper Pro Tips. With me, your host, Anne, and disembodied hands, Quindy, whose mighty karma has driven us to have a decent stream today and for Restream to be restored to its, well, somewhat former working, status. And then there's Justin and John. I assume Justin's still distracted. Has there been big news? Has the big news been? I assume John's just generally distracted. Justin has a really good, valid excuse, to be distracted right now. Yes, indeedy. We are here. The puppies are 2 weeks old today. Oh, okay. So we have a baby. Girl, boy? Boy. Oh, all right. All right. Excellent. Name? Do we have name? Names are important. And also, I'm just curious. Standard. I assume if not standard number, then we would know. I know it's Justin's baby. Are we certain that the standard number of fingers and toes is actually in the genetics? Sorry, Justin. Not sorry. Well, good. Excellent. Yes, if we can get a name, that would be awesome. I always love to know what people name their kids. All right, so we're Elfie today. We're Elfie today. I think we're Elfie today. Yeah, pretty sure. So, all right. So all I have is, unfortunately, the puppy video is, let's see if I can I have some pictures. Let me get to Bridget's text. Although they're from a couple days ago. First of all, these puppies are super fat. The puppy pudge is real. Look how fat that puppy is. That is a puppy that is full of milk. Even the tail is fat. That's how fat these puppies are. But let me see. I've got a good picture of Kalith at least. Let's see. We've got... Pink Girl's always sleeping. She's always the one sleeping. But she's a little pudge. You can really start seeing the color now. I think she's going to be more of a cream. And she's not as brown on her paws as her brother. And you can start seeing the color on her face coming in. And then she might end up darker than her brother. And then Kalith is the sable girl. And there she is with the waves, the sable waves as we call them. So they're getting there. And little Pike, Lavender Girl, was the first one to open her eyes. And let me see if I have I don't know if I have a picture of Lavender. No, Bridget's just been snapping pictures as she can. But Vax, who's the brother of Pink Girl, he's also stretching out. But with him I can see more brown on the paws. So, yeah, it's interesting. The color differences are now starting to be, obviously for all of them, except for the blacks. Bridget has a really cool setup here. Let me see if I can find the picture of her setup. Oh, there we go. We got, I don't know if these may have been, yeah, these were Friday. You guys saw these. She did have a pretty good shot of her play area. There we go. So this is her puppy enclosure right now. Let's back up. So yeah, we're talking puppies, not miniatures yet. So you can see that there's a table with a blanket over it. That's Mommy's den. That's where Zam has been feeding them a lot of the time. And then you can see they've got a big playpen. She's started introducing toys because it's the 2-week mark and their eyes are opening. So now they need more stimulation and stuff to interact with. And that's actually pretty important for puppies to learn early that things change in the environment. So yeah, this actually does make a difference. So yeah, all the little fuzzers are. And they're starting to wobble around on their paws. Yep. Yeah, Bridget's a good breeder. You can just tell. Let me see. I've got keyless fuzzy rump. Pudge, fat little otter tail. They have such otter tails at this point. They look like baby otters. So there we go. I think that's it. Yeah, and I think the otter tail, that is actually Pike, so that's actually Lavender Girl with the pudge and the pudgy tail. There we go. Puppy update. Pup date. Pup date accomplished. Yep. Yeah, so 2 weeks. So I have 5.5 weeks now, guys. We have 5.5 weeks of me not traveling, thank God. 5.5 weeks of lazy summer left before I have to fly to the Dakotas. Actually, fly to Minneapolis, drive to the Dakotas, and do a puppy evaluation and come home with a little pupster. Yep. Yes, because I usually don't go as much into the pup date later on in the stream. This is true. We try to keep on topic mostly. Mostly. Oh well, crows. They're cute. How about that? Don't worry. Yeah, you'll be seeing pictures throughout the week and weeks to come. Although Bridget will be a lot busier as time as this is where it starts. This is where the work starts for the breeder. Where mom's still mostly taking care of them, but there's extra poop to take care of. Yes, digestive systems are more fully developed now. Alrighty. So what do we got? We got some blue. We haven't figured out our accent color yet, but I'm not in a hurry. Yeah, we got a lot of little things back here. You know what, guys? Let's do a little bit of leather and wood grain today. How would you like to do some wood grain? We'll do some wood grain on her black staff. So I want a color that is kind of midway. I'm going to mix walnut with ultramarine shadow. So one way to create a classic black without wanting to use black. And why would you not want to use black? Okay. So pure black is very dead on the reason that oil painters don't use pure black is that it's a very dead color. It's very boring. The eye can pick up that it's like flat and featureless and not interesting. But if you create what we call a saturated dark, which has color in it, or use a saturated dark like blue liner. And I often mix black, mixing blue liner and brown liner, by the way. But mixing a blue and a brown is kind of the time-honored way of creating a near black in oil painting, and it works for acrylics as well. And that way, you get more of an interesting color. Especially when I start to highlight this, it'll probably shift slightly purple because I need to add white to make it wood grain. Oh no, Pendrake. Yeah, we're due to hit 90, or we're due to hit high 80s today. But you did a 14-mile walk. That's amazing, Kerniko. Awesome. So glad to hear it. But yeah, I bet you did get somewhat punctured by awful insects. I'm sorry about that. But I'm happy you did a walk. I got a lot of walking in over the weekend, and I'm kind of thrilled because I've got like some new stretches and they seem to be really helping everything. Yeah, it's going to be hot day. If it's hot for me, it's hot for the rest of the country, I guess. We seem to be having concurrent heat waves for the USA over here. Now I'm going to I started with a 2 and 2 here to mix this black, but I actually should put in more walnut because the ultramarine shadow is a very intense blue. So I'm going to and I do this the same when I do blue liner and brown liner. If I want it to be really a black or closer to a neutral black, I will put in more of the brown liner than the blue liner because the blue pigment has a high what we call dispersion. And that means that it just saturates the color very quickly and it kind of tends to take over the color. It's the same quality, by the way, that causes when you get a color with a lot of, like a green maybe, but you notice it's got kind of a blue float on the top if the paint has been sitting and separates a little bit. Same with purples where you see the blue float. That's that dispersion quality, that high dispersion is the reason. It's the same thing that makes the paint kind of take over a color you mix it into. It's why when you mix an intense blue into white, it actually shifts the white a lot more than you think for the amount that you put in it. Oh, bummer, Kerniko. Yeah, it's July. I know it's summer. Man, you guys. Okay, so Seattle is cooler a lot. It's more humid, so it felt hot like when we were walking and stuff. But it was much colder in the shade and everything. And man, I got off the plane yesterday coming back here, and we landed around 1:30, and I step off the plane and right in the jetway, all the hot air is coming in because it was 88 yesterday, and I was like, ah, and David's like, oh damn. I was like, oh yay, it's hot again, thank God. He thinks I'm a mutant. He's right. But I like my mutation. My mutation means that I'm really happy when it's hot out and I don't like get all melted. I don't melt like David. All right, so I'm going to mix these two colors together. This is the walnut and the ultramarine. I actually would not mix anything less than walnut brown or blackened brown with the ultramarine because this is just so highly pigmented that and it's still going to be a slight blue shift. But look, what does this look like? It looks like black, doesn't it? We did not go, which I berated my we kind of, his parents planned stuff, and if I want to go to Rainier, I'm just going to have to plan a separate thing. But we did not get to go to Rainier, so I was very sad. In fact, the mountain hid from us all the time I was there, except for when we took off to leave. So, hold on. We did get beautiful weather, however, for Seattle. Absolutely beautiful weather for Seattle. That was the last day. Yeah, so it was a beautiful day, and you can see they've painted the Space Needle orange, which apparently local Seattleites don't like, but I love. I actually really like the orange Space Needle. It actually makes it stand out against the rest of the city, right? And Seattle is beautiful. Like, Seattle's just beautiful anyway. Can I see the container ships? This is my new camera. My new camera, like, owns the world, by the way. I thought I might be able to see. Oh, yeah, you can kind of see them. The tiny little containers on the container ship in the background. Little blocks. And you can see the Ferris wheel down by the market. And, yeah. This phone, guys. This phone. I love this phone camera. It's wonderful. And then when we took off, this is what we got. That's what Mount Rainier looks like from about as tall as it maybe of 16,000 feet. Oh, they do in summer, Gibson. But yeah, so that's what Rainier looks like from the plane. Everything else around Rainier is 10,000 feet lower than it is. Because Rainier tops 14,400 feet. Y'all can look up how many meters that is. I don't know. But yeah, so that's Mount Rainier. But yeah, we couldn't see the mountain on any of the days until we took off. But then we got a great view of it, so I was very happy. Yeah, it's just a monolith. It's just like this huge thing. Like, you just can't. There's no mistaking Mount Rainier. If you are flying into Seattle and you find yourself looking and you do not see a gigantic mountain, you are not looking at Mount Rainier. You did not accidentally miss it. You can't miss it. You can't ever miss it. But yeah, David's parents are accustomed to planning stuff, so Gibson, so I just went with it. But in the future, I'm going to very much, now that I know, it is going to be a thing. And if his dad doesn't think that they want to do it, then I'm going to tell David we just need to go to Seattle and go to the park because I love that mountain and I need to visit it. So you'll see, even though I mixed a blue and a brown, this is a very convincing black. In fact, it did turn neutral because I added that extra walnut. It has a slight purpley tinge, which, let's see if I can kind of shield the overhead light here. Is a little bit harsh. There we go. So it has a very, very slight purpley tinge. It is not a dead color. You can see that there's a purple hue in it. I know bookend kitties, but they won't believe me anyway. No, the Space Needle is traditionally white pendrake. Yeah, I've only been to Seattle in July and August. So every time I have been to Seattle, it's been glorious and sunny. And that's really the key. If you want beautiful weather, come during July and August. But yeah, so you guys can see hopefully that this is, even though this is not actually black, even though I mixed it from two colors that are definitely not black, walnut brown and ultramarine shadow, we have nonetheless achieved black. But it's a more interesting black, and we should care about this because it's not just going to be a dull gray. It is going to be a very desaturated color, however. Yeah, I don't know. Spring in Seattle, I don't know about it. It's probably very rainy. I mean, I love rain, but I do like to have some nice warm weather too. That's the thing about not moving to Seattle is like I just like it hot, and Seattle does not get super hot except maybe 2 days a year. Bouquet Kitties, Mount Baker might be nice, but there is nothing next to Rainier in my heart. All right, let us get a highlight mixed up. But yeah, I'm gonna get to Mount Rainier if I have to like freaking fly myself up there. Although one thing I did learn is that Rainier they had a very cold spring in Seattle this year, and in the Pacific Northwest in general, and that meant that a lot of ways to get into the park actually are still like snow covered. So it wasn't a great it wasn't a great time. If it had been like the average summer, or if we had gone in August, then it would have been easier to get into the park. Yeah, everybody had a kind of mutant summer last year, right? Bookend, I think we did too. Although we're getting some nice hot days this year. I actually loved it yesterday, and today's supposed to be similar temp. Yeah. I just love how huge Rainier is compared to everything around it, and it just looms. It just smacks you in the face. It's a mountain that just smacks you in the face out of nowhere. All right, so we're mixing a bit of white into this. You can see the difference. There's not a lot of difference. Wood grain on something this small is actually not in scale. It's something that people like to do as an extra bit of freehand, but it really isn't like, you would never see wood grain at this scale. So it's not really accurate is one thing. I wouldn't normally do it, but since we're doing a bunch of like fiddly stuff on this mage, I'll just see what I can do. She could be using a staff that's got a larger grain that's naturally like a more gray and has been dyed or stained black. So then we might see something. But usually with a fine wood grain, you're just never going to see anything at this scale. Wood grain is much more realistic on a larger model, like most textures. Yes, fantasy large grained oak. That's the type of wood, is it? Yes, I'll agree with that. But just so y'all know, I tend to like to tell people when it's, let's see, this is going to be not, it's very close. Like I can see the stripe there, but it's quite subtle. So what I think I'm going to do instead is add just a tiny bit more white. Well, I guess once it dries, I can see it. Yeah, all right, I'll do it. And once it dries, it gets a little more visible. It does. Remember, most acrylic paint lightens when it dries, and that includes like Rainier blacks apparently. So I'm gonna do a wavy line. I'm gonna start with just a line, and I'm not gonna make it thick or thin to begin with. I'm just gonna get it in there, just get it down, and then kind of wait and see. There it is. Yeah, it was fun, Dogfather. We did go to we did all the touristy stuff. We went up to, I forget what that park was that we got the picture of the skyline, but his mom's birthday party was in the Arboretum, and it was very pretty. And then we went down to the Chihuly Museum, which is Dave Chihuly is a glassblower. He's pretty famous at this point. I really like his stuff, so, and David does too. So that was fun. We wandered around down there, exploring, and then we did get down. Then the last day we did get down to Pike Place Market, which was fun. I love markets, so that was a really good time. So you can see how irregular. I'm going over it now to kind of widen out parts of it and make other parts narrow. And I think this is key with wood grain. You want to vary the width of it. So go wider, then go more narrow, then go more wide, then go more narrow. If you're going to do something on a narrow surface like this where it's just a pole, you want to kind of vary it a little bit. It's going to make it look a little nicer. No, there is no Chipotle museum, although there could be a Chipotle museum in like Santa Fe. If you're talking the pepper. If you're talking the restaurant, then I doubt that such a thing exists. So the downside of this this color not really showing up until it's dry is that it makes it a little hard to sketch in the wood grain around it. You can't really see where your grain is going. Let me just add it. I'm going to add just a tiny bit of white. I want to see, and I can always glaze it down. Yeah, I had fun in Pike Place. I got some handmade soaps, which are one of my favorite things in the world. I love handmade soap and candles and stuff. I got some lotion bar. Nice. I like lotion bars. It's lemon coconut lotion bar. It's awesome. This is a black, technically, War Shadow, so we're doing wood grain just to do wood grain. I personally wouldn't normally on something this small because I feel it's out of scale, but I'm going to show you how to do it because a lot of people do like to do it. But I am going to add more white to my mix, and you missed the part where I made this black from mixing blue and brown War Shadow, so if you're coming in late, everybody, you can go back and catch that on the VOD. But to reiterate very shortly, we mixed a custom black because I do not like pure black. I think it's very visually dead. You can see the edge here is a little blue purple. This is walnut brown and ultramarine shadow plus pure white. But again, if you want to hear all about why I do this, then you can, and also see the pup date, you can go and catch the VOD after the stream. I always encourage you guys to go back and catch it if you come in late. Okay, so now you can see how pale that is compared to what I had before. So adding in white really does punch this up. Now I am going to add in this white, and I'm going to make this quite light now because I want to be able to see those fine lines that I'm creating. Then I'm going to go back with my created black color, and I'll glaze to bring this back down. Because I don't want it to be gray, I do want it to be black, but I need to be able to see this wood grain. And I need you guys to be able to see this wood grain. So now I'm going to go and map in over what I've started. Alrighty. Now we can start putting in wood grain around it. Now this is this is actually, I think, the easy way to do it. Because you don't have to paint the thin lines if you do it this way. If you are just leaving in your dark to be the lines between wood grain, and then you are putting in light when the light areas can be irregular, and you can make them wider. The only thing you have to do is kind of avoid going over your little black lines here. And if you do, it's not like you can't touch it up, but it's much easier to create these super thin lines between the grain or around the grain to create these wood parts around it rather than try to draw very thin lines. It's much easier to come at it this way. And this is true of any thin line that you have to draw anywhere. It's super much easier to just paint the areas around it and leave a dark stripe over a dark undercoat than it is to try to draw a really thin line for most people. Now we're starting again. We're going very light with this. It's going to end up looking like a gray wood very briefly, but then I am going to bring in probably a couple of levels of glaze to bring it back down to the black that we started with. And I just want to make sure it shows up, and I need to be able to see it. You can do partials where you just have the grain come down and then it stops and then you have another piece of grain on the other side, you know, kind of like a knot, the way that wood grows. But for a staff like this, usually you don't want knots and stuff down further. If you're going to leave a knot in the wood, you're going to leave it up. You're not going to actually put it down at the bottom where you need it to be sturdy if you're using it as a walking stick. Although if it's mostly decorative, then that doesn't matter. Graphic, I won't do that at this point. And again, just to reiterate, this is very unrealistic. It's very, very, okay, almost impossible, unless the wood grain is like olive wood heavy. If you were looking at a person this far away where you would see a person at this scale, you would never see wood grain. So doing this is unrealistic to begin with. But a lot of people like to do it, so I'm showing it. A lot of people will stipple, but I won't stipple at this point. Right now you're not doing like, you're blocking in kind of where the wood, the basic features of the wood, but if you're going to do a texture, I probably would do it after this point. And there's also, this is very flat right now. Remember, I'm going to be glazing this as well, because it's going to take it down. I want it to darken very much at the top and bottom. I want to just get some hints of wood grain at the end. I do not want it to be this garish, but this is where we're starting. This is the way I do wood grain. I know a lot of people will just do streaks and overlay them, but I think that's even less realistic. So for me, I like realism. That's what I tend to do. But so for me, I'm always questioning, you know, how would it look? We're so weird with 28 millimeter, right? Because we really in scale, we wouldn't see near as much detail as we put on them, but we do love to put our tiny details on them. So that's why we're doing this exercise today. In reality, I tend not to. I tend to just shade and highlight the wood and not do a grain at all. But wood grain does tend to impress your friends. So, you know, it's a good thing to learn. So we're going to block this all in. Tiny details are fun, yeah, to a point. Another reason I don't really like wood grain on staves. Here it makes sense, right? She's holding up the staff. She's presenting it as if it's important. So this is an example where I would do wood grain. However, most staves are kind of just sitting there. Usually they're not part of the focal point of the figure like this one is. So when you do freehand on a surface, remember what it does. It draws the eye, draws the attention of the viewer. So here it's suitable to put freehand on the staff because she's like holding it up. It's a part of the dynamic movement and purpose of the model. Most people, like Lizette, who's just sitting there holding her staff, I didn't do freehand on that one. Oof, what did I do? There were wraps. So she had wraps. Oh yeah, I did do a little bit of freehand. There we go. But I kept it real dark and real understated. So that's more what you're talking about with the stippling graphic. I still am doing some streaking, but I'm also got some stipples up here to suggest texture. But again, I kept it very dark, and we'll be bringing this back down too. I tend to do a little bit more freehand and embellishment on stuff for you guys than I would actually do for my own stuff. The dress is actually yellow bevel. But yeah, there are greens as well. That we went with a greenish yellow, and that is the hard part of doing a greenish yellow, is that people will invariably see it as green. But it's actually not chartreuse. The shadows are chartreuse, but it's actually a yellow. And if I put it back here, there. So the shadows are green, the dress is yellow. And then you've got the darker greens. Still haven't decided whether Ron gets that model or not, or whether I'm going to sell it. Alrighty. But I need to decide soon what models Ron gets, because ReaperCon is coming. So are you guys... Now, I'm not going to be there this year, so I won't be able to call any of you out for not entering the competition. But I expect a lot of competition entries. I hope you are all working on ReaperCon entries, those of you who are going. Someone with binoculars, Crowley. Yeah, the green shadows get pretty... they start to change the look of the surface. I think she looks more yellow on the back. Now you can see the yellow. And the reason is that there are fewer areas with the darker green shadows. So that shows you what I'm talking about with things that I call surface control. How much of the surface you keep a color is what it's going to look. So here, the yellow, because there's very few like deep folds, the yellow shines through and you can really see that it is a yellow dress. Whereas on the front, you've got a bit of deeper greener shadow here. And so the dress does not look as yellow. So the amount of area you let a color take up absolutely does influence what it looks like. That's cool, Gibson. Oh no, Thormel, I'm sorry. Yeah, you could do that, Graphic. You could absolutely do that. Like do a little kind of lightning thing going up. You have enough room on this staff probably to do that, especially if you start like... maybe you start a color at the bottom and then you go up to white, but then you get that color up again up here. Yeah. You could do that. But it's hard to do wood grain on black, so I'm doing that with this one. Also, the problem with that is that makes the staff stick out even more. So remember, if you do that kind of energy thing, it would be suitable again on this character because the staff is obviously like, you know, front and center in the composition. But for a staff that's just being held kind of static, where it's just kind of there, I wouldn't do the energy thing. It'd be better if we had a wizard pointing a staff out. Then that would, and doing the charging thing, that would be cool. But yeah, lightning effects are fun to do. They're not that hard. So now I'm coming in here and I'm filling in the little areas that I left in my grain. Still leaving those little stripes between them as well I can. I'll do a little touch up maybe at the end, but I still have another highlight to come in. This is coming along pretty nice. You can see the grain. It's a little bit irregular. More it would be like just like it would attract the eye to the wrong thing. Yeah, sus for sure, but I'm always thinking about color composition. And this is something that they don't really teach us over here in American painting. Like it's something you learn in art. And so a lot of Europeans are very cognizant about the color composition of the models they paint. Or they seem to be, because I think it's taught more that way over there. But here we don't. I mean, a lot of it's our gaming paint job. Everybody like grows up with painting models. Like that's how you get in typically. And so since you're taught that way, thinking about like color composition and how your choices affect like what people look at on your models isn't something we talk about regularly. It's why I talk so much about it. So like when you put a bright or flashy color or a bit of freehand or lightning or anything like that on a staff, if it's not being actively used, you're attracting the eye to the wrong thing. Correct, Kodiak. That's exactly it. And you will regularly see, when you start looking for that in good paint jobs, you'll see it. You'll see tighter detail and lighter and brighter colors near the focal points. Now, sometimes you'll see mostly light colors, but then you'll see maybe there's a splash of something down here or over here. But these will be small. Like you won't see like overwhelming things detracting your attention from the more important part of the model. Less details, you always want to go. The reason I went with white hair is because it makes it very, very easy to look first at that. And that's important, especially with such saturated colors and so much bling, because this NMM is going to read as freehand. So it's going to pull your eye down, but the white hair sticking out like it does still pulls your eye up here. So it's just, this model is challenging because it's got so much fine detail everywhere. We'll get our last little bits of wood grain in here. And then we'll put one more level, more of a stippling level, and then we will glaze. And our stippling level is going to be lighter. We're going to thin it more. Oh, I lost a bit. See that little gray spot right there? A little bit of gray so I can put my base color. I'm going to shade that in. There we go. All right, let's do another highlight and pick up some of the detail a little bit more, and then I'm going to start glazing. Everybody's got a different working process. If you tend to just jump in and run till you hit a wall, then just kind of try to keep that composition thing in your head. Just remember lighter, brighter colors, tighter detail at the focal point of the model, which is usually the face, whatever the hands are doing. The face and chest of this whole area. Down here, fancy as this all is, so at least it's not boring, but this isn't the important part of the model. Her stance is somewhat important. Like, it still informs the model, but mostly what we're looking at is here. So it's just something to keep in mind. That's why I like busts. You don't have to wrestle with the boring underparts. You just have to paint the more important parts. That's why busts are cool. That's why busts work, actually. It's because it is the focal point. And most of the time, the stuff you're cutting out isn't all that exciting anyway. So you just get to paint the exciting parts. All right, let's see here. I need to mix up a lighter color. So we're going to take our previous color and we're going to move it over again. We all have, that said, we all do have different working methods. Like I tend to, while I am, it's not like I sit and stare at the figure for a bunch of time, guys, either. What I tend to do is while I'm cleaning the model is when I start thinking about color, what I want to do, throwing around ideas. I'll choose skin. While I'm cleaning the model, I will typically land on an idea for skin color, hair color, and main color scheme. Yeah, you can do that for sure, Kerniko. And if you start with the color slots method that I do, where you just start with 2 main colors, and then everything after that needs to go neutral, you actually won't work yourself into a corner ever. That's kind of the point of color slot theory. You may think it's boring because you only get 2 main colors, but in reality, it makes for a very stable paint job, and then you can start working with adding in that 3rd color, or maybe that 3rd color will naturally happen. Like on her, it's going to be gold, right? So her color scheme is actually red, blue, and gold. It's just a shifted red, blue, and gold. So the red is not only lighter, i.e. pink, it's also shifted toward violet, and the blue is also shifted toward violet. So it's almost analogous, but the blue is kept very dark, so we get more contrast. And we get that yellow in there, which works with the purple in both of the red and the blue, because there's purple in both of those, and purple is the complementary color of yellow, i.e. gold. So everything else is neutral. The skin tone is neutral. The hair is neutral. The leather is neutral. The wood is neutral. The boots are neutral. You see that? All right, so this is my next stage. You can see that it is one step lighter, right? Look at how dark that is, and you can see the definite difference in this one. You can also see I've thinned it a little bit more. I don't want it too bold, but I want it to show up. And then we're going to glaze with our initial black. So I'm going to add some water actually to our initial black just to keep it all happy. And it's not really black, remember. It's a mixture of walnut brown and ultramarine blue. It just looks black, but it gives us a much more interesting color to work with. I ordered minis from that Ukrainian company. Signum? Is that Signum Games? They have such nice stuff. And they actually got the order out to me. I think I got an email on Saturday. So I like definitely supporting Ukrainian business at this particular time of the world. I'm grateful for whoever linked their stuff on my Patreon Discord. I didn't even know they existed. And their stuff is really, like, if you like the old Rackham confrontation style, you're probably going to love Signum Games. It's like that style. It has that feel to me. And they have a lot of werewolves. Although weirdly, I don't think I ordered werewolves. Because I have so many, I have so many werewolves right now. But I'm totally going back and they were also out of the werewolves that I was most likely to order. So now I'm going to kind of put little stipples. See how I've got a blob, then a dot, then a dot. Yeah, for anybody who hasn't looked at them, if you want to support what appears to be a very cool Ukrainian business, they have been getting orders out, which amazes me. So I'm going to kind of, though I am stippling, I am doing some longer lines as well. And that creates, as Graphic mentioned, that creates, you can see, an irregular texture, a more interesting texture. But I tend to only do texture when I'm to my second to final highlight and final highlight. Because my first step is always going to be kind of laying out the shapes, right? I don't really reach for texture until we're further in the painting process. Hey, Redlings. Oh, you should check them out, Graphic. Yeah, make a mental note on your little to-dos, your little mini painter to-dos to check out. Just remember, your wallet will hurt. Don't blame me. Blame whoever mentioned them on the on my Discord. I was unaware that there was a cool Ukrainian miniatures company. They do have a game, but I just bought the minis that I really thought were cool. So again, little dashes and dots just to create, you can see how that creates an irregular and more interesting texture visually. It's a very subtle thing, but it would be, right? And I'm also not going to necessarily do this over the whole thing. I'm going to do it definitely in areas where light is shining on the wood. Gives it. Dragons are the last thing I want. But werewolves. Giant wolf things. Those things. Yes, I want those. All of those, please. The way you guys are about dragons, that's the way I am about wolfen. Like, I can't have enough cool werewolf warriors. I really can't. All right, so a little bit out here. Then we'll do the back. Then I'm going to glaze, and then I'm going to maybe come back over with a little bit of extra texture. I did see the fairy dragon, Cornico, but it just did not... Like, it's a beautiful fairy dragon, but I wasn't quite there. It's dragons, guys. Dragons just, I'm scarred. I'm scarred from painting the dragons that I painted for Reaper. At least the fairy dragon, like, I consider getting it at a different point, but right now I'm really excited about, like, there are some models that I bought, like, last year that I got via Kickstarter in the past year or two that keep coming back. You know how when you've got a model and you've got a whole box of models, but maybe there's one or two models in that box that keep popping into your head? Like, that's the way I am right now with some of the models in my box. And so I'm actually not as likely, even though the fairy dragon is beautiful from Signum, I'm less likely to go for it because I'm like obsessed with painting some of my Limbo models, and also some of the Chimera busts, the Chimera Geisha and Samurai Girl busts. I'm really, really obsessed with those, and we're expecting some beautiful models to arrive from Journeyman, and also, what did we just get? There's another one that we got recently. That was also an enablement from my my Patreon. Thanks, guys. Thanks, D. Clearman and Jazzion. Shout out. Shout out to the people who most often enable me. Oh yeah, the 75 million. It's beautiful. Thin paint, Gibson, for skin. Thin. Oh, you're a Wolfen collector as well. I could have guessed, Dogfather. I could have guessed. Yes. They're going to teach you to make Poke Tools? That's awesome. That's such a great idea. That's a great class. All right, so now we've got some kind of speckled. We look like Calif's wavy fur, the puppy from the litter. Our staff looks kind of furry now. So now let's do a glaze. Let's take this back down. Because when I go back, notice how that staff now, it isn't just dark. Like, it actually, it's more on the level of, like, the pink, right? As far as it's light and dark. I want it to be darker than that. It's standing out a little bit too much for me. So let us grab our black, and I'm going to grab some and move it to a new well. So grab... Oh, wrong color, Anne. Wrong color. I've been sitting here making highlights. My brush wants me to still make highlights. Yes, and speaking of my Discord, I do have a Patreon. Quindy just linked it in the chat. It is patreon.com/paintingbig. There are many, many things. I'm working on my new $5 PDF. I think I want to talk about the uses for different colors of brown this time. I've got my popular browns. I was going to do like most useful browns, but I think instead I want to talk about like the different colors of brown and what each of them are very useful for. All right, so we're thinning this down, and it's pretty powerful stuff. So this is a very dark glaze. This is more almost like a light wash, but if I was doing a wash, I would be adding sealer instead of just water. I like to add pretty much just water for glazes. I don't like the texture, kinda. Like when I add medium, it gives the paint a different feel, and I don't so much like that when I'm trying to do glazes. Yeah, well, if you have stuff like ogres, that's a good one to practice on, Gibson. Like this guy, get some of these. It's more muscly than your Sophie, but areas like this big smooth shoulder and the pecs and everything and the head, these are great areas. And because it's a monster, you won't stress out as much, hypothetically. because you're not going to be obsessed about getting it perfect and pretty. So I highly recommend like the Ogre Guards, because it's a lot of skin and you can paint them non-yellow. Like you don't have to do it the way I did. But just, yeah, practice your skin on those, because if they look rough, it's an ogre. No sweat, right? Yeah, so do that. And then remember to thin your paint a lot. Like, remember, layering is 1-to-1 paint to water minimum. And the more white you have in that paint, the lighter that paint, the more you must thin it. Never go over 2.5 or 1 to 2.5. 2.5 drops of water to 1 drop of paint. So that would be actually a 5-to-2. So if you have 2 drops of paint, 5 drops of water, that's the thinnest you ever want your layering, guys. And that's only for colors like pure white. So mostly for an off-white or a paler skin tone, I would be going 1-to-2. So 2 drops of paint, 4 drops of water. And that should give you close to decent, like you'll be able to kind of tell if you're getting streaks or if you're getting like actual blend. Yeah, Bob and Julie, if you're, I didn't missed it if you're in chat, but if you're in chat, that make your own Poke tool is a totally brilliant idea for a class. All right, so I'm going to take this glaze. There are 2 ways to apply a glaze, guys. If you're doing a big area that's like a cape, get a much bigger brush and slather all the color all over it, and then kind of take a damp or dry brush and just kind of slurp off the excess. However, for small areas, you can simply paint a very thin layer on. And for this staff, I'm not worried about like demarcation lines because it's already got wood grain. So if there is an extra little like, you know, like this, if I get a little edge line anywhere, it's not a big deal. And I can try to paint toward those black lines anyway. So I'm going to do that. I'm just going to put on a thin coat over the front. And I'm going to try to make sure that I keep it up against a black line so that I am not going to leave a demarcation line. Now this glaze is going to, and I'm definitely painting from either one side to the other side, or I'm painting from up to down like I did there. And that has darkened down the staff a lot. You've seen it, it drops it a whole level. Now what I want to do is take that glaze again and darken down the areas really closer to the ends. I want the middle upper to be the lightest, to show the grain the most. I'm not completely painting over the wood grain here. I'm just darkening down the end there and the end up here at the top. I want some variance. And then what I can do, once I've got that to the point where I really like it, is I can lighten up the area right here by her hand. Bring the wood grain out just a little bit more. And once again, I'm going to try to emulate that stippling that I did with this color. To kind of bring that out a little bit more close to the hand. So that my wood grain stands out, but that it kind of fades out a little bit when it gets lower. So it's not as, it's not going to stand out quite as much. But it's still there. The pattern just becomes a lot more subtle when it's away from where she's gripping the staff. Now I feel like I need a little bit more down there. Getting a little bit of color on my her dress here, but that's okay. I can always touch that up. This is the danger of at this point of the mini when you're working with things like glazes, where you're gonna kind of get a little haphazard and it's gonna make a blob on one of your cloth bits. But I mean, we still have to mix up these colors anyway if I'm gonna put it like up here in the ball. And also once I start doing the freehand back here, more of the alchemical symbols, which is probably gonna be next time. But I'm going to need to mix up this color anyway for touch-ups, so it's not a big deal at this point if I get a little blorf on my dress. I'm going to keep toning down, using my glaze to tone down that area. And I'm going to tone this down a little bit more. And I'm essentially layering with this glaze. I mean, glazing and layering are really two parts of the same kind of thing. They work together. And so, I mean, glazing is a consistency that you usually can layer with unless it's very, very thin. Sometimes your glazes are so thin there's no way that you would layer with them. Nice, Sturgeon. I don't think I signed up for their mailing list. I don't know how their game is either, but their minis are awesome. Alrighty, so I think I've got where I kind of want to be on this now. It's reading darker, but it definitely still has grain. It's not distracting, but it's, especially not with how loud her bling is, but it's there, right? And this is nice and dark, and we can still see the wood grain throughout. If you get very close to it, you can definitely still see the wood grain, but you see how we've gotten lighter around where her hand is. And that's how we end. That's how I would probably end up. I don't want to take it any lighter. So here it's kind of like a grayish wood with a black stain, which I like, actually. I like the feel of that. If I do want to darken down any little bits, I can still glaze over them. But I like the subtlety of this. I think it works very well. So there's our wood grain. So it's not going to be the first thing you notice when you look at the model, but it will be at least an interesting part. All right, let's do some leather bits, shall we? So most of these belts are too small to really do a lot on, but we can do a little bit. I believe that I started with my russet brown on this one. Russet brown's very yellow brown. I've mentioned that before. So I think I'm actually gonna, so often I bring it up very neutral, almost grayed with driftwood brown. I wonder if I want to do that this time, though. I may try to use my polished leather instead. Never done that, but it will bring it up toward the gold. Yeah, we'll try to do this. Let's try this. I've never tried this one before. They seem like cool people, Kernico, Signum. Uh-oh. My pokey tool needs washing. Speaking of pokey tools. Or, not really washing, but at this point, it needs a knife taken to it. It's got too much paint buildup. So setting up, remember I like to invert things. So I've got like 4 drops there and 1 drop there. So then when I bring in my polished leather, it's going to be 1 drop there, 4 drops there. But now you won't get that means you won't ever get that you forgot your password email. Oh, yeah. My paints are like sad. They're like, you have neglected us and we are clogging in protest. So if you ever wondered, because at this point I have to do it, How to clean your pokey tool. How to clean your pokey tool. You have a terrible, awful, clogged up pokey tool like me. Because either your friends are using it and just returning it to you without cleaning it, or you yourself are in a hurry, like yours truly, and have not cleaned your pokey tool. You've got a horrible, clogged up pokey tool. Take your X-Acto knife and just start scraping. Just very lightly along the side. You can see that bright, shiny coming out again. It actually doesn't take very long to clean your pokey tool. That's why I'm taking a second just to do it now to show you guys how to do it. Because this T-pin is, of course, steel, and the knife blade is steel, and the paint is very soft compared. Look at all the gunk, though, that was on my pokey tool. There we go. This way you do not have to deal with any solvents or other cleaners or making it all gooey. It's just a fairly fast clean. Oh, Kuroniko, I'm cleaning it now. I can't trigger you anymore. Yes, pokey tool, absolutely. But this is sometimes how, more often my pokey tools stay nice. I mean, I've been using this one for a while and there's like almost no paint on it. But this guy is just so sad. Any pokey tool that goes to paint club and gets utilized. There we go. It's like sharpening a knife. There we are. Yay! Do. Shiny pokey tool. Look at all that gunk. I'm glad Small Cat is enjoying the pokey cleaning. Then I can just get these. This is nice about having paper down at your painting station. You can just kind of sweep it all onto your hand. There we go. There. Dump it in your handy trash can. It's not necessary, Pendrake. It's like clean. Paper towel, not necessary. Paper towel wouldn't really do anything because I never got it wet. It was all dry. I mean, it wouldn't work if it was wet. That's your crusty. That's when your paint is all crusted. If I'm gonna use a paper towel, it'll be right after I use it. Then I'll dip it in my water, and then I have a little paper towel over here on the right that I normally rub it on. But that one just started to hit the bad point. You can do it, Gleep. Yeah, I mean, it's best practice would be honestly to clear the bottle. Like you can see that I've got that little piece of dried paint there. Usually you just have a tiny bit, but you can use the tip of the pokey tool and just keep clearing that out. See these guys coming out? And eventually you'll find that as you get down, the paint will get somewhat pliable where it's more moist and it's only really usually dry at the top. And then you're just not getting as much out when you're using the tip of your pokey tool. And that's the point where I'm like, okay, now I can put it in. Now, if you're really worried, what you can do is break, because you did see I do get a little bit of dried paint here. So you can kind of pop your top off there and then grab something like a Kleenex and just do that. So, or you can come at it from the opposite direction, poke up through the hole, though it can be kind of hard to see the aperture when it's covered in paint. Then we pull it out. We're pretty clean. Grab our towel again. There, shiny. That's what David did the other day, Dino Titan. That's what my fiance did. He was like, I came in and his wet palette, because he uses a wet palette, so it's all too evident that he's got this giant slew of red all over his wet palette. And worse, he doesn't clean it up right away. I'm like, if I did that, I would be in the bathroom, like, cleaning off my offended wet palette paper. You know, I couldn't deal with having half of my wet palette covered in red. All right, now we can get back to mixing. T-pins are great, Kodiak. If you squeeze really hard, you're just waiting for the day, Pendrake, when you have a paint explosion. Yeah, I mean, a paint crust around the tip of the bottle. All I do, well, yeah, I don't have any right now, but when you've got a buildup around the outside tip, all I do is kind of use my fingernail and just shove it off into the trash. It'll dry in a little cap, and you just do that. I don't think, like, bright red would have been a very good terrain color for us. Eat to serve. But yeah, if you squeeze really hard, Pendrake, you're an accident waiting to happen. It's inevitable that eventually you will have a paint explosion. All right, we're going to do it that way. And now I want some off-white. I'm going to use Cairnstone this time. But you could use bleached linen. All right, I'm going to put one drop there to lighten it up. All right, let's see how this color. I've not tried this color setup before. As far as the specific colors, I haven't used polished leather to highlight my russet brown for leather before, but today we're going to do it. We're going to use these two colors. Russet brown is a very standard dark leather color for me. Polished leather is a very golden color. It looks brown, but it's actually not. It's actually a very dark yellow, and if you pop some white into it, you'll see that. Putting some water in there. Oh, what are you squeezing then? I didn't understand. The reason I added that off-white, you can now see, because this actually would have been almost the same color as that if I hadn't. And so I actually need to add a little bit more white. Just a tiny bit though, half a drop. Oh, I see. Weird. I wouldn't squeeze the tops. I mean, if I'm going to clean off the top of a paint bottle, I'm just going to use a paper towel or something. And I'm just going to let's see if I can find a dirty one. All right, so you got this kind of thing going on. I will grab my towel or Kleenex, get a little tiny water in it, and just kind of go like this. I'm not really squeezing it, I'm just using friction. It picks it up pretty well. And then you've got a nice clean top. Oh, I see. I see, Pendrake, I see. Yeah, I just like the knife. For one thing, squeezing really hard, my hands can kind of get achy. Too many years opening twist top paint bottles means sometimes my hands can't squeeze as hard and I hurt. But yeah, you could do that. I mean, if it works. I just find the knife to be a very easy answer, and it's also kind of soothing and satisfying actually scraping the paint off and watching the super shiny come out. Justin's baby arrived, otherwise I don't know. We know it is a boy and that it did arrive. Justin's baby. He did arrive, sorry. It's still a podling, though. It's not really a human yet. Babies are just podlings at first, just like puppies. Just like puppies are fur dumplings, babies are podlings. Podlings become toddlers, and now the puppies right now are also puppy toddlers. They're toddling on their little legs. They're getting a little more coordinated. They're almost able to walk, but not quite yet. They're still pulling themselves around mostly. They're starting to almost interact with each other. Yeah, I decided I didn't want to really like disrupt the stream with pup date later on, so. But the puppies are 2 weeks old today. Gray Mouser. So I have a new video to watch. Bridget does a program called Puppy Culture, which is a socialization protocol for baby puppies that gives them the best possible start in life. At least it says it does. And so far, judging from Bridget's puppies, I would say that she does a pretty darn great job. But as her puppy people, we get to follow along on the videos of all of the different things she'll be doing over the course of the puppies growing up to be 8 weeks. So I have a new video to watch. The 2 to 4 weeks period, I think. I don't know anything, Pendrake, for Mini Justin. And the family, they are probably currently getting peppered with messages and questions. So I will wait for the official announcement. And y'all will probably, I'm sure Reaper will make an official announcement at some point. And maybe on Reaper Live. And then y'all can But yeah, I assume that Reaper Live this week we'll talk about, we'll congratulate Justin and McKaylee on their new baby. And maybe you guys will get some news. Now I'm using my lighter color here just to kind of highlight up a little bit of the leather on the boot. I'm trying to use a slightly irregular brush stroke, kind of a little stipple. Just want it to be a little rough. You can see the difference between the right and the left. Now again, we are in danger of going a little bit too light, so we can always bring in a dark color to glaze with, either walnut, blackened brown, or russet brown, or a mixture of any of these. I'm never, just don't be afraid of over highlighting. It's so easy to take a glaze or a wash and just nail that back down, but you'll still get the benefit of the highlighting you did. Like, it'll still show through that you did the highlighting. There's actually several little wrinkles here on this little boot. You can see I picked them up right there. Yeah, I finished Turtle the other day, so I'm starting a new model for myself soon. I've got her all prepped. It's one of the Limbo Kickstarter models that I got last year. So we got that coming up now. And I like that. I kept that one a little darker by keeping the highlight a little bit more understated. Now, this one is in the shade underneath this. Like, you can definitely see where that cloth falls over that boot. So keeping that boot a little more understated and having a little lighter on this side is actually not out of line. Like, it actually makes sense. Polished leather is light. It's very light, but it's darker than tanned leather. Like, you could use this as a shadow for tanned leather, the 9031. It's about the same range as leather brown, which is 9030. Hold on, where did I stuff my leather brown? Oh no, it might be in the other room. Yeah, I must have put it in the other room. Or, oh no, it's over there. It's hiding because it was part of Wolfie's paint scheme. So if you look at leather brown and polished leather, they're very similar. Leather brown has more white in it. So what that means, guys, because they're very similar color. But what this means is this one has more white in it. That means it's going to cover better. And that was a priority in our first colors for MSP. That's why this has more white in it and covers better. But when we got to later paints, I had better technology. We'd started working with the high density pigments and stuff. And so I was able to create polished leather, which doesn't have bad coverage. It definitely is more transparent, but there are uses for this color. So, you know, it's kind of like that. This color, this and a mixture of polished leather and rich leather is very much like raw sienna. If you are you can see that the rich leather is darker. So you actually technically could use these as a triad, but I wouldn't. They're just too close together. Like, I find that I want triads to be more apart. These guys are close together. This one is definitely darker. Kind of right between these is the raw sienna color that tube paint artists use. So I'll use a mixture of this if I want to really nail raw sienna. Oh yeah, it's significantly darker than 9030. 9030, also 9030 is more brown, and 9030 is also not as vibrant. 9030 has black in it, which means that it's gonna be more muted and not as bright a color. That's why polished leather is polished leather. It's got that richness to it, and next to it, leather brown looks more washed out, which you sometimes want, right? Sometimes you want that more washed out, more neutral. Sometimes you don't. So one thing I often do also is I will bring my highlight color in, and I will get the sole of the boot. And this is just attention to detail if you have the brush control. So you can see the top of the sole here because she's got heels. There's definitely a pump. She could dance in these. And you can bring the highlight down, just a touch of highlight around the toe of the boot, just a little bit. Now the cobblestones definitely impinge on the boot at this point. I can see the sole just a little bit there, but I don't want that to get too strong. Looks a little wonky. I'm going to use my staff color as a liner color here to bring that in. But you can hit that sole, and you should hit it on the outside just to show that you are paying attention. We have a little bit of a highlight there that's a little bit much. But this is like little details on the boots. Like, they're not really like super important, obviously. They're just boots, but picking out things like the little creases and the sole just helps to show that you're paying attention to detail. Helps to create more finished look. I still feel like that's really mucky. Can't tell if it's roughness in the cast or if it's on the toe here. So I'm gonna kind of paint it over dark and redo it. I don't like it. So we'll just block that in briefly. So just putting that little bit of shadow over there, took down. You can still see that it's a little bit lighter than some of the dark parts here. Now the shinier the leather, remember, the sharper a highlight you'll get. So if I want to keep this leather kind of dull and scuffed, I will not take it up to white or even close. The closer I take it to white, especially on a dark color, the more shiny the leather will look. So if I want a very shiny leather, then I will do that. But first I'm going to redraw my highlight here. Get a little bit sharper. There we go. Much better. And I think I am going to bring the toe, at least, of this other boot up as much. It's okay if most of the foot is covered over, but I want to pick up some highlights on the outer edge in the front. Yeah, have fun, Crowley. Don't let the meeting eat you. The meeting eats your brain cells. That's what meetings do, I think. So just a little bit here of highlight on either side of that seam line for the sole. because I brought up some highlight here on my NMM, I can't just ignore all this area. I've got to actually pay some attention to it. So a little bit of highlight there. Yay, Kiri face. I still have to figure out a puppy enclosure. I should probably do some Googles today. Maybe I'll ask Bridget what she thinks. I don't want to buy a specialized piece of equipment. Just doing some shadows with my my dark color along the bottom there. Using my near black, my color, the base color for the staff here, as a liner also, because you absolutely can. There's no reason not to. It's a really dark color, and we've got it all thinned down already. There, so that's shiny now. I mean, then we can see the details there now. Maybe I'll ask Bridget for ideas, what she thinks. Maybe just a crate, but I don't know. Can't decide. I don't have any X pens anymore. I probably should get one and use it. There. All right. A bit of highlight on the leather there. Let's take that color up. I think I do want one more highlight, so I'm going to mix that up. Take this color and really make it kind of a lighter tawny color. Could also just use something like blonde hair. That color, if you wanted to. But I'm just going to take a little bit of my previous color and pop some more Cairn Stone into it. That's the one big drop, I think. That's the color I had on my table handy. So that's what we'll use. One off-white is very much like any other off-white when you're dealing with mixing up muted colors like this. When you're working with a color that you're trying to keep pretty pristine, like vibrant, like you're trying to make a pink or a light blue and you still want it to be not muddy, that's when you don't reach for an off-white like that. You reach for pure white. But working with neutrals like this, browns, any color that's not super bright. So when I'm mixing highlights for this pink, violet, red, I'm definitely using white. Or if you have something like spectral white, which is a purple white, you could use that because it'll work with this color. But otherwise, I would very much use pure white for that. And I would use pure white for the blue as well. All right, let's see how this looks as a little highlight. Just going to highlight the very top. Just a little bit of extra highlight there. That's not bad. A little bit on the toe over here. Just like little tiny touches. This introduces a little more contrast, picks up the highlight. Notice this highlight is perfectly in line with the brighter highlight here on the NMM. So essentially I'm saying this is where light is falling here. Excellent. Now we can do the belts. So those are so tiny. And because they're dark, like I really don't want them to stand out and get kind of gobbled up by all the details around them. So what I think I'm going to do is actually line these. I might actually change the color of this belt. It's not reading dark enough. So I'm thinking about changing it to the black. Same black as the staff. Same black as the leggings, which I also have to highlight. And I totally had forgotten up to that point. See, I'm thinking the belt there is just going to kind of fade into everything otherwise. I don't really want it. I mean, it's there. I want it to be visually there. So black is probably a better choice. Because it's going to contrast better with everything around it to make it darker. So that's better. I like that a little better. Now I'll grab that bit of a gray highlight. Because this belt is so tiny, you don't really need to do much to it. You really just need to catch a little highlight here and there, and that's all you need. And it's pretty much set, as long as you've got a little bit of highlight. You don't want too much, you just want enough. Let's really quick do these leggings since we have the black. I'm just gonna pull out a little bit of highlight just down the front of the leg here and on the knee over here. The knee is very much in shadow, so I'm just gonna put a tiny touch of highlight. Over here it's more in light, so I can do a little bit of a brighter highlight. But because it's black, it has to stay mostly black, or it's not going to look black. So be very careful how much gray you add for a highlight, or you will lose the black. Alrighty. Now we can do our little pouches. Getting closer and closer to the front of her being completely done. I may try to do an eye. Man, her eyes are just like tiny. So these are eyes that if you're going to do them, you want to probably artificially enlarge them just a little bit with paint. I don't know. We're not going to have time today because we're already at end of stream. I want to just do a quick highlight on both these pouches and then we're done. Got to make up a little bit of hours anyway from being gone. I'm just going to pretty much highlight around these folds and around the top of the bag and a little cord attaching it. And just a super quick and very stippled because it's leather. So I'm going to try to kind of use a couple of tiny dots at points to kind of bring that leather out. Try to glaze a little bit to bring that in. There. Cool. And on this one, all right. a little bit extra light color here around the corner, I think, because it's the most likely to be worn. Most likely part to be worn. Up here on the top, same. And that brings out our leather color and our edges of the pouch. With pouches like this, only concern yourself usually with highlighting around the edges. If the top didn't have that decorative pattern, I would do that too, but it does, so we're not going to mess with it. So, all right. There we go. We have done leather and we've done the wood grain today. So we have... We're almost there. We need to commit to our colors for the gemstones, the hilt of the dagger there. These are going to be accent color. And this one up here, I'm really going toward the pink. I think we need it to complete kind of the color circle here. So I think I'm going to go pink up there. We've got everything else. I thought about white, but I just don't think it's going to work. Here, though, I may go with a pale blue white, which is the ultramarine with white. That'll be similar to the hair, but not really. So I'm thinking about that for that. And then I'll just have a lot of freehand to do. I've been thinking a lot about how to do this and make it look cool for you guys. So like how I want to link up kind of this stuff and make it look more celestial. So yeah, thanks everybody. And hopefully on Reaper Live on Thursday, we'll get a baby update. If not before, maybe we'll get one before. But I hope you guys have a fantastic day. And what do we have Rhonda? Yes, Rhonda stream at 2 p.m. USA Central Time. Yep, no problem, Graphic. Hope you all have a fantastic day, and I'll see you again tomorrow. We'll be working on Centaur. All right? Bye, everybody.